Alright, welcome to the grand finals of the elementary division for Kydc. Congratulations to both teams for advancing to the grand finals. I will be your chair for this round. My name is Youngjae. My panels are Junyoung, Aeun, Seokjin, Yusong, Yujin, and Jeongsu. We would be debating under the motion today, this house would ban all presidential elections in primary schools. As a note to the audience members, please keep your voices down to a minimum so that we can all concentrate on our wonderful debaters today. Please keep your phones on silent. And if you have to leave the room, please do so once a speech is done. So for example, if the Prime Minister finishes his speech, please leave in file before the Leader of Opposition begins. Do not leave during the speeches. Without much further ado, we'd like to start the debate with the Prime Minister. Here.
May I start?
Yes, you may.
So, Mr. Madam Speakers, our team currently believes that all current styles of presidential elections are not going to help the actual style of the people actually preparing for voting in the future, Mr. Speaker. In today's debate, throughout this whole debate, our teams and all other speakers are going to prove to you about why presidential elections held in primary schools are not going to help them there's not going to provide them with any benefits in the future. And our team believes we're going to also tell you about the harm that this will bring to the students themselves. So before we move on to our team's first and second arguments, let's define what presidential elections are going to mean in this debate. Presidential elections in this debate is all types of elections held in a school level and also in a class level, and that is held in primary schools. So under this definition, let's move on to our team's first and second arguments. First argument is about the role of primary schools in a principal level. Mr. Madam Speaker, primary schools are actually the first step of public education that people experience throughout their whole lives. Mr. Speaker, because of this, our team believes that the actual thing that they need and they need to learn in these primary schools are not about education, but Mr. Speaker, we rather have the emphasis on socialization themselves. So Mr. Speaker, because of this, our team is going to prove to you why presidential elections will actually harm socialization in a principal level. So Mr. Speaker, now let's move on to how this is actually deterring socialization in the first place. Mr. Speaker, what presidential elections are actually promoting in the society is that it's not about competition based on their own merit, but this is a competition based on how many friends you have. It's about how many friends you have in your own school, and this is what actually is making you become a president in these presidential elections or whatnot. So our team believes that this is especially harmful on primary schools because the students do not have that much knowledge of socialization in the first place. So this is leading to separating the minority, which are introverts and does not have the ability to actually become president at the first place. They're dividing these people from the people who actually can become leaders and who can actually become presidents from people who cannot be. Mr. Speaker, our team believes that this is making the introverts and people who do not have that much friends isn't able to socialize and they are not able to compete fairly in this debate. So why? There are two main cases. Firstly, if you get small votes and very little amount of votes when you participate in these presidential elections, you will actually feel betrayal from your friends when they didn't actually vote for you that much. Second case is even if they become presidents, Mr. Speaker, they will have the mentality of them actually being the actual head of the students when they are not, Mr. Speaker. Our team believes that this will actually lead for them having a mentality will be very harmful to interaction with other students in the status quo. So Mr. Speaker, both these two cases is actually deterring the socialization of the actual people who are who became the presidents and the people who are not becoming presidents in the status quo. Now let's move on to our team's second argument about why the presidential elections in primary schools is deterring the purpose of election in the first place. Mr. Speaker, elections in schools are made because you want to make these presidents be more accountable of one's action, and they want to make you prepare them for the actual future elections that is going to happen in the future. So Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you about two main reasons why this will harm this. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, the standard of actually voting for people in primary schools is not the same as your future. In the status quo, Mr. Speaker, as I emphasized you in our first argument, is a fan vote between your friends in the school, which is actually harming the actual purpose of voting and the standard of election that you go through when you actually participate in elections in the future. Mr. Speaker, the actual standard should be about the policy, and if the candidate is actually worth being a leader. But this current style of primary schools is not actually this. This is a characteristic of fan voting, Mr. Speaker. This just goes against the standard, which our team believes is a harmful thing. Second, Mr. Speaker, even if they are actually elected by the policies, and even if they actually become elected because of the policies that you made, our team believes that these policies are not actually feasible in the first place. Mr. Speaker, in primary school, because you're not actually the head of the school, the actual power lies in the teachers, not the students themselves. So our team believes that the president's role is realistically being what we actually call as the teacher's pet, Mr. Speaker. So our team believes that this is not actually student presidential voting when we actually face the reality when they're actually becoming a teacher's pet, not actually becoming the actual president of the students. Mr. Speaker, because of this harms the purpose of election in the first place, and because this actually harms and deters socialization between students, our team is very proud to oppose today's motion. Thank you.
Speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 25 seconds. I thank the Prime Minister for his excellent speech. To open the opposition's case, I call upon the Leader of Opposition.
May I start?
Yes, you may.
So hello ladies and gentlemen, so today we believe that in the opposition side, we are actually trying to benefit all the stakeholders in these primary schools, which are first about the people who are actually in the candidates, second about the people who are actually trying to elect these presidents, and we believe that these kind of stakeholders are the main stakeholders of our debate, and we believe that the opposition side is the side that can actually benefit these all stakeholders that we're going to prioritize in today's debate. So first, as the leader of opposition, I'm going to rebut to the previous speaker. So the previous speaker's first argument was about how there would be the role of primary school. So he talked about how this was the first step of public education and there would be socialization. But however, we believe that first, we think that in the cases of the students who want to be elected as presidents, we think that these students would be able to have more incentives to be more socialized, and they would be able to actually go to other people who could be some bullies or other people who are shy. And we believe that these kind of incentives and more voluntary incentives could help these people who want to be president to have more socialization in their primary schools. Secondly, we believe that the friend part of them actually talking about how this is not a real competition, we believe that having more friends is actually also another merit, and we believe that these kind of friends actually come to you when you have a good personality or when you have good intentions in your life, and we believe that these kind of situations, no thank you sir, we believe that these kind of situations are also situations of their merit. The second argument they talked about was about how there would be some head of students would be betrayed because these students who did not get a lot of votes would feel betrayal. But however, we believe that even though these kind of no thank you sir, we believe that these kind of students would not actually feel bad, and these people who got elected for the student president would not feel as the head, because there's enough check and balances in today's schools where these teachers and other students also have other methods to stop these children from actually bullying another person as their class president. No, thank you, sir. Now I want to move on to our team's first argument. So our team's first argument was about how there would be more benefits for the stakeholders. So I have two analyses. The first analysis is about how these students who are the candidates of these student elections would have a benefit. So first, we believe that they would be able to have more situations of promoting yourself better. No, thank you, sir. We believe that if you're having a discussion to promote yourself while doing these elections, we believe that these people would be able to have a more clearly set identity, because they would actually think about how these benefits or how their personal benefits would actually contribute to that class or the school. We believe that the speech of these students would benefit these classmates, because these students would get more knowledge of the delivery of the speech, and also we believe that they would be able to talk more in front of other people, leading to better persuasive arguments or persuasive speech. We believe that this is a very different and more exclusive benefit rather than debating or other academies, because it is actually benefiting all two stakeholders, which the next stakeholder is secondly about the students who elect the president. So we have first A about the better elections. So we believe that there would be better practice for thinking in the long term for these students, because they would be able to listen and think about more better policies, more better speeches that these people can actually apply for these classes and have more attractiveness for these other classmates. Also, we believe that there could be more rational choices possible for these other students who are able to listen to their classmates' speeches. And also B, we believe that there will be much better long-term benefits for these students who are listening to these presidential elections, because they would be able to cooperate with these president elections rather than like thinking of them as the head and thinking of them as a leader. We believe that these class presidents would not only not only choose like policies or not only choose their own like class benefits by their own, but we believe that in the current status quo, they're able to discuss with other people, have more discussions, and we think that this actually means that these people who are in the classmates would be like better for the future, since they would be functioning citizens, as their students would be able to like think about their policies in the class and more follow these policies in the end. And therefore, we believe that in the primary schools, we should have more presidential elections. Thank you for listening. I'm very proud to oppose.
The speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 29 seconds. Thank the Leader of Opposition for her wonderful speech. To continue the government's case, I call upon the Deputy Prime Minister. Yes, you may.
Mr. Speaker, as a person who is currently attending elementary school, I know that people vote on others and other presidential candidates in primary schools fundamentally because I like this person and not whether this person can be a leader or not. And we believe that in our side of the house, this is the biggest harm that we are presenting to you, that these people vote based on who is my friend and who is not, and who I want, and whether I want this person to be the actual class president or school president based on who is my friend or not, and regardless of who could be a better leader, which is something that is actually needed when these people grow up. And this is the biggest harm that we are presenting on our side of the house. So before I go into our third argument, which is about how there might be further harms, including herd mentality and parental pressure, we're first going to rebut to the previous speaker and answer the question in which do presidential elections in primary schools actually teach students about actual elections that will be occurring in our society. So first off, they say that having a lot of friends is an actual merit. So first off, while this could be a merit, we don't necessarily think that this is a merit that is like, we don't think that this is a merit relevant to somebody being a leader. We don't think that we don't think that the merit of somebody being a leader necessarily has to do with how many friends I am having. And furthermore, we think that the problem with this merit in the first place is that this is totally dependent on the quantity of friends in the first place. I mean, we don't necessarily think that this is something schools should be exclusively promoting. Because, Mr. Speaker, while having a lot of quantity of friends might be beneficial, we think that another thing we have to teach people when socializing is the quality of friends and what friend can actually stick to me even in the long term. And further, we actually think that. We furthermore reject their characterization about how these people will think more about the long term and the actual benefits and harms one candidate could actually provide to them. We don't think that this is true. The reason why I participate in the first place is because I am biased about what my friends think and who my friend is among the presidential candidates. Especially in primary schools, these elections are very influenced by even things like gender or whatnot, and herd mentality, which is something we believe is a very big harm coming from their side of the house. So furthermore, I want to answer a question that's going to be very crucial. Do presidential elections in primary schools actually teach students about elections that are in society? We don't think so, because first off, we think that in actual elections, what people do consider and should consider is first off, what policies could best represent me, and second, is this certain politician or candidate capable of benefiting the society and making policies both in the short term and long term. However, we think that in school elections, what I consider is what my friends think and who is my friend. This is something I'm going to be elaborating in my third argument. So my third argument is about the further harms. We have two levels of analysis. First off, herd mentality. So we actually think that the students don't know and don't really care about democratic or voting values. What they want is my friend to win the election, or for me to win the election if I am a candidate. We don't think that they are going to think about actual meaningful things like the secrecy of voting, which is something that is very influential in our society. The reason why this is very problematic in the first place is because, the reason why the secrecy of voting exists is because because voting should be representing what I think, not necessarily how I am influenced by how others think. Because we think that, especially for primary school students, we think that if you analyze their psychology, they think that they're going to feel isolated from their friends if all the other people actually choose somebody else, regardless of who I am choosing. And we think that this is going to naturally pressure for people. This is actually naturally going to pressure these people to choose who the crowd likes, necessarily not representing my own values. And furthermore, we think that this is going to lead to parental pressure because, especially in primary school, students are very reliant on their parents, and we think that this is actually going to cause pressure to them into doing something that they necessarily do not want to do. And for these reasons, we are more than proud to propose today's motion.
Speakers spoke for 4 minutes and 16 seconds. I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for his great speech. To continue the opposition's case, I call upon the Deputy of Opposition.
May I start?
Yes, you may.
So, ladies and gentlemen, before I go on to our team's last constructive argument, I'd like to firstly rebut to the old cases that all responses that was coming out from the government team and go on to rebuttal of the honorable leader of opposition. So, firstly, they came up to the podium and talked about the role of schools, which means that actually the role of schools and especially the primary schools is not doing education about some doing like elections, but making more socialization. However, ladies and gentlemen, actually in their case, socialization is also achieved in our case because in order for this for these people to get more elected and get more votes, actually they should socialize with the minority and also majority in this case, which means that actually it is not exclusive benefit coming out from their case, but actually we're having more exclusive benefits because also we're guaranteeing this socialization within our part. And also, actually by this, ladies and gentlemen, they can be also responsible about their own acts and own opinions and also own kind of expressions or etc. Which means that actually in this case, in order to make more good policies and also more effective policies to make the class environment better, actually in our case we can have more communication within this kind of people, which is also we're guaranteeing all the benefit that was explained by their case. And secondly, I talked about how it can harm the minority because there's less socialization. However, ladies and gentlemen, as I explained in my first rebuttal, actually in order to get elected, minority votes are very important because of this 2 or 10 people in the minority, actually their election rates changes, which means that actually in order to be elected and also be a president in the school, actually communicating with the minority and also making policies about them is very important. Which means that actually in this case, from primary schools, if they learn how to get communication within the minority in the future case and also in the long term, if their career is going to be politicians, actually they can hear more voices for this minorities, which is also beneficial in our case. Secondly, I talked about it is the purpose of the elections, which means actually they only think about their likes or etc. However, which means that also they can this kind of elections is not same as their future. However, ladies and gentlemen, even though this kind of election things are not same as their future, actually in our case we also give opportunity for the students to also have a job experience in the future. No, because the role of school is to provide the potential of the students. Actually, by providing these elections, actually they can also know the potential in this debate, with rather exclusive and not other in their cases. Which means that also we can provide good experience and also potential for the students to students in the long term. And also, ladies and gentlemen, they said that no, policy is not feasible, and also this power lies to only students. However, ladies and gentlemen, actually in the election, the power is given to the students, and also actually by this, ladies and gentlemen, they can have more responsible acts. And for example, if the elected president had one kind of policy, but if the kind of elected people cannot achieve this policy, actually they will get a lot of harm effects. Actually, by this, ladies and gentlemen, they can be more responsible about their own policies. Now I'd like to rebut to our leader of opposition. They said that actually they only consist on the fact rather than policy, but also likes or friends or etc. However, ladies and gentlemen, let's consider the consequence. If we vote by likes or because of the friends, actually students can know whether this kind of votes by likes are effective or not effective. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if these friends get elected and be a president in the status quo and in the schools, actually they can also consider whether this kind of the policy that was given by this likes and also this students is also whether effective to their case, which means that actually in the long term they can also have more rationality enough that in order to make more better choices than the students in that term. Ladies and gentlemen, they also talked about they can also have biased opinions by the friends. However, ladies and gentlemen, firstly, I think that there are diverse opinions because not only one kind of choices are given, and secondly, we want to prevent them being biased. So, ladies and gentlemen, practicing from the young age is also more efficient because in this case, that we can make less kind of long-term harms. And thirdly, they have talked about they only think about their friends mean, which means that actually they cannot consider the meaningful in the voting system. However, by opportunities, students can learn whether my vote can take an impression and impact to the society, and also by this, ladies and gentlemen, in the further, they cannot make votes that is based on the likes or etc. So by this reason, I'm very proud to oppose.
I thank the Deputy of Opposition for her wonderful speech. Speaker spoke 4 minutes and 38 seconds. To continue the government's constructive case, I call upon the government whip speaker. Yes, you may.
So, Mr. and Madam Speaker, we believe that this debate should be more focused on primary schools. We believe that they should focus on how their team's benefits only occur during the process of basic education and the process of primary school, when socialization is much more important. So on to my two questions. The first question is about, is this motion justified? Our team have talked about the principal values about role of schools and the purpose of elections. Their team is simply saying that there are some benefits, so this motion isn't justified. We talked about how these people could promote their identity and they could get a lot of information. So firstly, let's talk about the characteristics of primary school students. So number one, we believe that the utmost purpose of primary schools are socialization. This is why they don't give advanced education. They give advanced education during the process of high school and university. This is why, Mr. and Madam Speaker, this is especially important. Shaping their identity is much more important in the process of primary schools. And secondly, the characteristic of students. They are emotional, Mr. and Madam Speaker, and they are incapable of looking at the long term. So they're talking about how these people would have an incentive to socialize with minorities because for these people, the instant votes that they get are more important than the long-term relationships. We believe that these people would rather focus on persuading themselves on a short term, for instance, giving snacks or whatnot. We believe that there's a very low probability that this socialization would act forever. And their team is talking about how these people would be able to find their potential, but we believe that this benefit only applies to people that succeeded to become a leader in the first place, because if they actually fail, they lose their potential and they lose their self-esteem in the first place. This is why their benefits are in a very short term and in a short range. And also, they're talking about how having more friends is a merit. So we agree it might be a merit in some cases, but this isn't necessarily a prerequisite of being a good leader. And since in the status quo, this is focusing too much on this factor, Mr. and Madam Speaker, rather than factors that have to be more important. For instance, policies, we believe that this is the harmful thing that we want to identify in this debate. So what's just more important, promoting themselves and getting more information, or fulfilling the role of school? So number one, Mr. and Madam Speaker, we believe that their team's value is a secondary value, because we believe that promoting themselves and getting more information is also a part of role of school and fulfilling the role of education in the first place, because this is actually a process of being a better person and being a person with a better self-identity. This is why, Mr. and Madam Speaker, the role of school has to be prioritized over anything. And secondly, when we look at the long-term effects, we believe that information doesn't suddenly help these people be a better person in the future, because this is basic information, Mr. and Madam Speaker, that they get in the process of primary education. This is why there's a low guarantee that this education will be effective in the long term, but our team's cases are very effective in the long term, because if they learn wrong information about voting, they can't change the stereotype, because like they explained, primary education is important. We believe that if these people cannot change their stereotypes for a very long term, this is even more detrimental for these people to become a better person and succeed. This is why our team takes this first clash. The second clash is about the practical benefits and harms. We have talked about how there would be further harms about herd mentality, and how there is a higher possibility for parents to pressure these people, and how these benefits wouldn't occur for a long term. Their team is simply saying that there is an opportunity to get rational choices. So we believe that their team's benefits in the first place got mitigated because our team's second argument, how this goes against the purpose of elections, and also rational choices. We believe that this rational choices benefits isn't big because it is very different with real voting. And if it is different with real voting, and if we couldn't apply this in real life, Mr. and Madam Speaker, there is no purpose of learning this, because simply having a chance to vote someone isn't a mere benefit that is exclusive to their team's case. And also, we believe that we have to look at these children's characteristics. They are sensitive. We believe that more than making a rational choice, they will get more harms, because Mr. and Madam Speaker, there are more people that fail in becoming a leader than people who succeed in becoming a leader in the first place. We believe that we have to think about the majority that fail and the majority that have lower self-esteem because of this case. This is why, Mr. and Madam Speaker, their team's benefit isn't big. And also, the best case scenario that they could provide in this debate is the status quo, because they're not doing anything. But our team's worst case scenario, not having a chance to participating and representing themselves, isn't so exclusive and isn't so important, because there are chances in the future to participate in voting and election. This is why we have to prioritize our team's value, and we take this debate home.
Speakers for I thank the government whip speaker for her excellent speech. To continue the constructive of the opposition side, I call upon the opposition whip speaker. Yes, you may.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, my most honorable Mr. and Madam Speaker. As the whip speaker and the opposition team, furthermore, I would like to directly go on to the two clashes that I saw throughout the debate. So the first clash is about the effectiveness of in this presidential election in the primary school in the future. So firstly, I had two values. Firstly, on the student's perspective, and secondly about the comparison that this effectiveness can bring. So firstly, our team believes that actually all the things like fan voting is actually can work in these adults too. Actually, when we vote in these in the realistic democratic society, people who support right wing only vote right wing, and people who support left wing only vote left wing. Our team believes that just the fact that these supporters change to friends doesn't mean that actually this is the only exclusiveness that is actually existing in these primary schools. They said actually these students will only vote for their friends' policies. However, ladies and gentlemen, also similar in these parents and also similar in these adults, they vote the person that they like, not whether taking about these policies. They vote the person that actually has the same thoughts as themselves, not just not considering all of these policies benefits. No. And also our team believes that when we compare the consequences of the voting, even if these students make a wrong policies, our team believes if we keep experience, then these students who listen to these policies will get experience of filtering in and out of these policies. Even when they grow up, they can make wrong and irrational choices. However, ladies and gentlemen, our team believes that rather looking at morality and radically, they will consider the benefits, harms, and know if the policy is realistic, and all of these considering all of these factors, they will actually vote without just voting on the friends that they like. And also, they have the perception of students that they have a perception of students that they are always irrational. However, the reason why they get hindered and swayed by these friends' policies is because they have lacking of basic knowledge related to the policy. It is because, however, because they can't differ the realistic policy and the idealistic policy. However, when we educate these students and then actually make them have an experience and the opportunity to actually vote for these presidential election in their primary schools from their early age, I think they're going to have the ability to filter in and out all of these no harmful substances in these policies, which will be actually increasing their rationality. And not only that, making them to participate, represent, and also express their thoughts based on these presidential election, it's going to have a benefit in the long term, because in the short term, they will just follow their friends because it is their basic instinct of human of liking the friends that you like. However, in the long term, our team believes they will have the ability, as I said before, a lot of time of filtering ability and not just believe totally on their friends' policy. And now let me go on to the second value of the comparison. So in the both case of the assumption that no children can make a rational choice, our team believes that we should value whether they will make rational choice in the future, Mr. and Madam Speaker. Even if they make a irrational choice in this present, in the future, by learning these progress, they can make rational choices. And also by having a lot of interest and knowledge by these presidential election, our team believes there can be a more rationality. And secondly, and now let me go on to the second question about fulfilling the purpose of the school. So the opponent team says actually the purpose of school is increasing the socialization, not learning about these purpose of these presidential election. However, our team believes that having a fact of a lot of friends doesn't mean that just friends don't come to you when you do nothing. Friends come to you when you cooperate and when you interact with the minority and majority. Friends don't come to you when you just do nothing. However, the fact that you have a lot of friends means that actually you have the ability to cooperate and you have the ability and the capability of actually interacting and communicating with any person who has diversified ideas. And this is the most basic quality that the leader should have, which is actually in the future in the democratic society, when all people have different ideas, the ability that you have to cooperate and actually interact with these people means that if you have a lot of friends, this means that actually you have the ability of talking and actually socializing with these minorities and majorities. And also our team believes that we should learn the importance of voting. And as an example, when these children vote in these presidential election in primary school, they can know that actually their one vote can change the whole impression of the school. The reason why there's a low rate in voting in these status quo is because adults don't know the reason why their one vote is actually going to change the society. However, from the early age, when we keep emphasize the importance of these voting, they will actually think that their one vote can change society, and by these high self-esteem and by these recognition, our team believes that this is going to fulfill a better democratic society. And because of these two questions, our team strongly opposes the motion, and thank you for listening.
Speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 23 seconds. I thank the opposition whip speaker for her great speech. To conclude the opposition's case as a whole, I'd like to welcome the opposition reply speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, we think that both teams have an ultimate goal to protect these students in the long term, and we think that we have to compare the harms and the benefits of these presidential elections and how this would give effects to these students. So first of all, what they told us was how there is not good standards for these primary school students. But first of all, we have constantly responded to this point upon how we don't expect 100% rational and informed choice. But what you need to understand what we need to consider is when in both sides, when we don't have rational choices, we can have basic foundation in the first place and how this can give a benefit in the long term. Therefore, our LO told us how there is rules and how this can actually contribute to the long term perspective, and that is why we think that these people can change their perspective of seeing people. They can change their stereotypes in the long term. And moreover, we think that even if they don't have the reason why they don't have rational choices, informed choices in the first place, is because they did not have a lot of experience. That is the main reason why we conduct this presidential election in primary schools, and that is why we think that when they have basic knowledge, as they actually have experience, we think that these standards of seeing these elections can actually change in the long term. Moreover, they talked about how these doesn't contribute to the role of school, how the role of school is upon socialization. First of all, we have told you in our whip speech how it doesn't just contribute and become a president just because you do not do anything. We think that when you have discussion between other students, when you actually cooperate and actually go further to a minority, that is how you become a leader. That is how you become the leader, and that is why we think that these having a lot of friends is also a merit that we should consider when we actually see elections, and that is why we think that we can actually fulfill the role of socialization. And moreover, we think that even if they tell us how these presidents would only make policies that these students like, we think that even there is a sufficient amount of check and balance in the current status quo. But however, even if this is not occurring, we think that that is the exact reason and the innate reason why we think that this is the foundation and how this can actually incentivize these people to have a rational choice and make a rational choice and make good policies in the long term. And moreover, we think that even if there are parents' pressure, we think that we actually prioritize the process, not the pressures coming from the parents, because we have told you from our 3 speeches how process is more important than the result, and that is why these majorities who even fail to be a president can actually contribute in the long term, how they can actually have better policies, and in which way they can actually get elected from these presidents. And even if we think that this is not exclusive in this case, because for example in studying, if we do not have any pressure, it doesn't result to good scores, and that is the main reason why we think that parents' pressure can actually lead to good results of these students, and that is why we think that we can actually fulfill all these goals, and therefore we think that benefits are much more exclusive than harms, and that is why we think that we win this debate.
Speaker spoke for 3 minutes and 18 seconds. I thank the opposition reply speaker for her great speech and the opposition team for their contribution to the debate. To conclude the grand finals of the Kydc Elementary League, I'd like to welcome the government reply speaker. Yes, you may.
So, Mr. Speaker and Mr. and Madam Speaker, we believe that in this debate that there was a very irresponsible opposition. Furthermore, we believe that they actually ignored the role. Of schools and also had a lack of engagement to our third argument. So, before actually comparing the main values in this debate, we would like to tell you that they gave no engagement to our third argument, which was about herd mentality. So, why is this much more effective for our side? Because the fact that they did not rebut to our herd mentality, it just shows how it's going to be even more harmful for the children themselves, which therefore allows us to take the main stakeholder in this debate, which is the children. Now we would like to compare for you the main values that were both brought up from both of the teams. So our main value was about fulfilling the role of school and also fulfilling the purpose of election, and their main value was about the basic knowledge of voting in the first place. We believe that their value is a secondary value to our value because to actually fulfill the basic knowledge of voting, we believe that the role of school actually needs to fulfill the responsibility in the first place. Furthermore, we believe that it's going to be much more effective if we fulfill socialization. That's why we think we should prioritize this in the first place. Therefore, we think that their value is going to be a secondary value in this debate. So ultimately, the question we need to ask in this debate is which side better educates the students in this status. Better educates the students. So we would like to look at this in a diversity of perspectives. Firstly, about the role of schools. So we had already proved to you, Mr. and Madam Speaker, that socialization should be much more prioritized than the education of voting that they're talking about in their side. However, to a point about betrayal, they had only talked about from their leader of opposition speech that they will not feel that. However, we believe that in these sort of cases, they had a lack of explanation. They did not prove why betrayal is not going to happen. Furthermore, we think that the fact that socialization is not going to happen is actually going to be socialization will not necessarily happen. Furthermore, we think that to fulfill the role of schools, our side is actually going to better educate the students. Secondly, they have talked about how friends are also a merit. However, we believe that this further encourages the fact that the policies are not actually going to be looked at, which also harms the purpose of education. But furthermore, as the deputy speaker had already explained, schools should not necessarily be promoting this. Furthermore, we believe that these sort of cases should be banned. That's why we think that their part about how friends are the merit is actually going to go away. Lastly, we would like to look at the other main stakeholder rather than children, which is already proved on our side because they gave no engagement to their argument. They have talked about how minorities and how also minorities are going to become a very important part of the debate. However, especially because they are class presidents, we believe that after they try to actually help these minorities, after the election actually happened, we believe that they actually just stop caring for these minorities. Why? Because they have less of a percentage of actually going down of their stage, which is called the president of their class, and this was also explained by our host speaker. That's why looking at which better educates the students and also looking at the value comparison, we believe that we have won this debate. Thank you.
Speaker spoke for 3 minutes and 27 seconds. This concludes the debate. I thank the government side for their contributions also. Debaters, please cross the floor, shake hands. Let's give the next round of applause.